Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. This is The World This Week. With us, Vivian Walt of Time Magazine, Judah Grunstein of World Politics Review, which you can find on the web at
worldpoliticsreview.com.
And you can find Newsweek on the web as well, thanks to the Daily Beast. Christopher Dickey is here, and Melissa Bell, senior correspondent here at France 24. Okay, it's true that the sovereign debt crisis has brought down 5 European governments and counting. It's true that banks aren't lending to each other anymore. It's true that the whole continent's braced for austerity. But at The World This Week, we like to accentuate the positive. In Belgium, 1 week of pressure from the markets did what Flemish and Walloon politicians couldn't. Over 535 days, force agreement on a new prime minister, the French speaker Elio Di Rupo. Will the same magic work on that other seat of government that's based in Brussels? That's the question that everybody is asking now. One European commissioner warning that the EU has 10 days to save the euro. Before that, though, there'll be a Monday sit-down in Paris between the French and German leaders. For Angela Merkel, though, the problem's not in Brussels, it's in Frankfurt, home to the European Central Bank.
We have no intention, and we are very far from this intention. Our fundamental laws and our constitution keeps us from doing this in any case, so we have absolutely no intention of being controlled by Europe, of allowing our budget to be controlled at a European level.
Okay, so I guess that means no to Eurobonds, Christopher Dickey.
I guess that's what it means.
But more than that, it means the European Central Bank won't have, in the near future, the same kind of clout that the U.S. Federal Reserve or the Bank of England.
No, it's not going to, because you don't have the same kind of government in Europe that you have in the United States. But I think that's a kind of an irony listening to her, because what she's really saying, she's addressing the German parliament there. And what she's really saying to them is, we're going to set the rules. So maybe the European Central Bank will give out more money at some point, but only if we say we want it done this way, and they're not going to tell us what to do with our budget. Basically, she's looking for a world in which she can tell Greece what to do with its budget, Italy what to do with its budget, France what to do with its budget, but nobody tells Germany what to do with its budget.
Well, one of the things, though, about the central bank, which I found it would be amusing if the situation weren't so frightening right now, is that Sarkozy gave a speech. He said the central bank will remain independent. Merkel gave a speech. She said the central bank will remain independent. The head of the central bank, Draghi, gives a speech. He says the central bank will maintain its independence. And the problem is that all three of them have different ideas of what that means. For France, it means that the central bank will be independent of Germany and able to intervene. For Germany, it means that the bank will be independent of France and will remain out of the markets. And apparently, for Draghi, from what I've read in terms of parsing a central banker's statements, he's looking at increasing interventions, but not to the extent of actually buying, issuing Eurobonds or buying
a lot of European existing bonds.
By the way,
buying on the secondary market as opposed to buying directly from the government's offering.
And by the way, Ms. Bell, we're seeing in this country a spike in Germanophobe statements. We even heard one of the backbenchers from the Socialist Party compare the Merkel to Bismarck.
And of course, and watching her as well, one couldn't help be struck by this this irony that there she is facing the Bundestag, and each of them, for each of the leaders, that is their trouble. They're looking at their national parliaments, promising that they won't give an ounce of sovereignty away at the very time when the only thing that could ever possibly save the Europe, given the urgency that you allude to, is some sort of shedding of sovereignty and some sort of fiscal union, the one that she alluded to today. And of course, all this happening at a time when the parliaments themselves are under pressure from people who, given the circumstances, have never been less happy to see any sovereignty go. There's this, the walls have gotten higher between European countries in terms of the minds of the populations than ever they had been in recent times. The parliaments still reflect this, and the leaders in the uncomfortable position of somehow finding words that weave some sort of path in between all the positions, and it seems absolutely impossible. How this will go next week, I can't begin to imagine.
There's also something contradictory here or surprising here in France to the extent that it's true that on the left side of the political spectrum, there's a lot of attacking this idea that Germany will control France's budget and sovereignty. On the right side of the spectrum, which was the Gaullist party, you hear over and over, we need to be more like Germany. We need to get costs down in terms of labor costs down. We need to reform the labor market. We need to be more competitive. So you have this sort of former nationalist side of the spectrum being using Germany as an example, and the former internationalist side of the spectrum sort of raising these nationalist barriers.
Acting more like the conservatives in this case.
It's a complete role reversal.
The 17 nations share the common currency. Nations that aren't even in the euro are rooting for salvation. The British Prime Minister paying a call on the French capital on Friday. But the most emphatic cheerleading, there you see Nicolas Sarkozy with David Cameron, the most emphatic rooting for a solution came earlier in the week in a statement from Poland's foreign minister.
I will probably be the first Polish foreign minister in history to say so, but here it is anyway. I fear German power less than I'm beginning to fear German inactivity.
Vivian Walt,
that is a first.
When you hear the Polish foreign minister, when you hear Melissa Bell's damning oracle there of next week's summit, what's going to happen?
You know, the extraordinary thing is there's so many layers that this needs to be looked at. Can Europe grow itself out of this crisis if all it does is austerity? Clearly not. They've gone and injected a whole lot of US dollars into the system in order to try prop up the euro. So ultimately, even with the US being so deeply in debt itself, it's still regarded as the lender of last resort. So I think there's such a disconnect between what is happening with the ECB in Frankfurt and what's happening in each country on the streets as they're looking at how it's going to affect them and the leaders trying to address the streets. I just don't know how they bring these two things together.
All right, and coming back to what Judah was saying a moment ago, the outgoing French president Thursday making what sounded like a campaign speech ahead of his bid for re-election next May. Nicolas Sarkozy addressing conservative UMP party faithful in Toulon, the south of France. This in a bid to rein in Eurosceptic backbenchers on his side of the aisle and also the far right, and to sell his Save the Euro stance.
It must be clear that what was done for Greece was a very particular situation and will not happen again, and that no states within the Eurozone will be in a position of defaulting.
All right, never again, Christopher Dickey, and this is a last chance summit we're heading for.
Well, haven't we been hearing that for months? I mean, everything is a crisis. And every time they come up with a solution, the markets respond by going, yes, this is great. And a couple of days later, they look at the fine print and they go, oh, no, that's not so great. And they take another plunge again. And, you know, you do have a sense that when Angela Merkel says this is a marathon, she's sort of missing the point. I mean, it may be a marathon to get it fixed just right. But right now, they better figure out how to sprint, because the basically speculators are closing in on this whole thing, and they will destroy the euro.
All right, and
it's kind of like a heart attack patient in the ICU, and the doctor gives him the fitness and dietary recommendations when what he needs is a defibrillator. But one of the things that I've been saying really since the start of the crisis, because there have been a lot, especially of American observers, who are saying, look, the solution is clear. There's just political will doesn't exist. And I think that's a bit simplistic. There's been a need for crisis to push the political will. It really wasn't possible, for instance, a year and a half ago for Angela Merkel to present the package, the real blockbuster package that has to come next week. A year and a half ago would have been impossible to sell. I think, though, at this point, that injection of liquidity from the U.S. Fed and from the central banks was really the last defibrillator for the euro that they can expect, and that it's been this tug of war. Will Germany agree to the funding the European sovereign debt crisis, and Germany saying we'll do it, or we might do it, but you need to start governing the way we do it. And it's been this arm wrestling match. And the question, so we've had this year and a half of building it up to this next week. I don't think after next week, if they don't come out of it with a real solid agreement that really addresses the issue of the debt crisis as it stands right now, I don't think they'll get another chance at it.
all right. Necessity is the mother of invention. We'll see what happens. Lawyers for Ivory Coast's ousted president call his transfer to the International Criminal Court at The Hague a kidnapping. The ICC's special prosecutor, who personally ironed out the details of the move with his Laurent Gbagbo's successor, Alassane Ouattara, insists other prosecutions may soon follow. Ouattara countering critics who say no one from the winners' camp's been indicted so far.
We were accused of favouring the winners. But there's no better justice than the impartial international justice. The judges from the International Criminal Court will listen, and it's their decision that will be implemented.
Vivian, well, a point in Ouattara's favour is that it's true that right now the judiciary system in Ivory Coast is not exactly up to snuff. And there is a chance, many say, that a fair trial could happen outside of Ivory Coast. On the other hand, no one indicted from the victors' camp, and no one especially for those massacres committed back in March where 300 civilians were killed.
I wouldn't hold my breath waiting for them, actually. I doubt that they will come. I guess we might be surprised, but I think this was really a kind of way for the ICC to try shore up its credibility, which has taken clearly a huge knock over Libya in the last few months. I don't think the timing is, accidental, that right after they decided that Libya could try Saif al-Islam Gaddafi in Libya, which barely has a functioning court system at the moment, they go and, demand and get a transfer of Gbagbo.
In fairness to them, though, it was the rules, I believe, at the ICC are such that when the Libyan justice minister said, we can try him here, there's little they could do.
Well, possibly, but they didn't kick up any argument either. So it didn't seem to be much of a discussion. I think it was kind of a fait accompli.
They have time. I mean, without professing to be a legal expert, but we actually just ran a feature issue a feature article on the International Criminal Court, and apparently their mandate is to indict and to try if the country where the crimes are committed refuses to pursue a legal case. And in other words, the court is really set up to pursue cases where the criminal has won. In this case, the indicted criminal lost and has been sent to the court because the country itself believes that it can't effectively try. In Kenya, for instance, after the election violence there were 6 indictments, and Kenya got a chance to try those 6 and continually failed to bring the legal case.
And a lot of eyes are turning towards that case now.
So there's time. In other words, if the trial in Libya doesn't go through, the ICC has recourse to then demand that they get
all right. In Ivory Coast, though, the critics of the ICC break down into 2 camps. There are those, we've mentioned it, pro-Gbagbo, who complain of victor's justice, and those who see this as a question of sovereignty, of national pride.
We should be able to fix our problems here and not have to send our president over there. After all, he was the leader of this country for 10 years, and today they take him away somewhere far away. Why not here? We could try him here. This means that in Ivory Coast, we don't have competent judges. We don't have judges in Ivory Coast. We have intellectuals here. Why send a president abroad?
There's a lot of hurt pride in the comments that we got on our Facebook page this week, Melissa.
There is the question there, as Judith said, of course, the ICC is a court of last resort, and Laurent Gbagbo probably could have been tried in Ivory Coast, perhaps should have been tried in Ivory Coast. The fact that the crimes were committed there, that there is a sort of therapeutic process to a population being able to see a former leader tried. There are arguments for his having been tried there, I suppose. And we heard that herd pride there. Another problem about his extradition, of course, is one of the common complaints made against the ICC is that it has only ever indicted and issued arrest warrants for Africans. This reinforces the fears of some people that it is a court so toothless so far that it is only after the leaders of African countries or the most failed states that can be pursued.
Right.
It lends credibility to that view.
And we're going to stay in Africa with our final story. The website of the Johannesburg paper, The Times, ran the following item this week: Santa Claus may need a snorkel. It's no joke, though, for southern Africans, which is feeling the brunt of global warming, like at this maize farm in Mazoe, Zimbabwe.
We don't have any irrigation, so seeds are planted dry and the waiting period has become longer.
On the sidelines of the World Climate Change Summit in Durban, South Africa, the World Meteorological Organization put out a report that states that the 13 warmest years on record have all happened since 1997, and places like Southern Africa are feeling the brunt. And yet, I've seen loads of columns this week from climate change deniers, Vivian Walt.
Well, we think the Euro crisis is scary. I mean, this is really scary. And one of the scarier things is that really, aside from us here, there's very little coverage of it. The Durban conference has been going on for days. There's been very little coverage, certainly in the major US papers. And I think everybody's kind of bored with this issue.
The Chinese have said that they might be amenable to some kind of rules when it comes to this. That's what one spokesman said at that Durban conference, but that hasn't gotten much play.
Well, we'll have to see what actually happens. I mean, the reason that there's not a lot of news coming out of the Durban conference is because there's not a lot of news coming out of the Durban conference. It's not a lot is happening there that tells you stuff you didn't know before. Yes, these have been the 13 hottest years. Yes, there's a problem with global warming and with climate change. Yes, it's hotter than it should be with La Nina out there in the Pacific. All of those things are true, but it's not revelatory. I mean, Time magazine was running pictures of polar bears without an ice cap years ago. I mean, that's all been going on for a long time, and that's really the danger here, is that it's just gradual enough so that people don't react until it's too late.
All right. Well, we'll continue to follow that story. Christopher Dickey, I want to thank you for joining us. I want to thank Vivian Walt, Judah Grunstein, and Melissa Bell. And thank you for being with us here for The World This Week.